this exciting episode, we discover that sometimes you want to go where everybody, or just a hired killer, knows your name, and they're always glad you came. Because, they can surreptitiously photograph you. You want to be where you can see our troubles are all the same, right? You're in a murder case and in need of Perry's help. Rest assured, he knows your name. Cheers. It's Perry Mason, Season 4, Episode 10, The Case of the Loquacious Liar. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode, we give you a summary of the plot, compare plots with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel if the episode was an adaptation, give you a little trivia, reveal the episode's theme, and then revel in a Perry proverb. That's a pearl of wisdom from the man himself. Then we head over to the water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of our fave legal cruise adventures. But first, say it with me, to the law library! Each time we visit the law library, we discuss a legal conundrum from Perry's case that helps us set future legal precedents. In this trip to the law library, we discuss corporate law. The Martin Boat Company has some leadership issues. Judson Bailey wants Sam Crane out, and they're gonna vote it out. It's a proxy battle. Here's what Sam Crane says about Judson starting the meeting on time.
Judson, you've got to give me a little more time.
Why should I?
Because there's such a thing as ethics. You may be legally entitled to call a vote this very minute, but if you do, I'll have corporation lawyers on your neck forever.
Well, what kind of ruckus could these corporation lawyers make? What with that man's neck under their feet and all? First, you get these legal eagles to turn up anything irregular in voting procedures at any point in corporate history. We didn't get enough notice about this vote from 5 years ago, or who counted the votes from the last meeting 3 years ago. Then you get them to run into court asking a judge for an injunction, a big red stop sign for any kind of vote that freezes corporate action until the judge decides what's right. And there goes all of Judson Bailey's elaborate corporate planning. Or even better, maybe you make a call for discovery via these corporation lawyers. Then they make it a lengthy, drawn-out process. Legal info and evidence diving. Endless busy work. Martin Boat Company is sinking, and the lawyers are swimming in cash. It might take forever. Is Mr. Crane in the barking dogs seldom bite category or not? I think that question means it's about time we got to the plot of this episode. The Case of the Loquacious Liar. You'll wake up to the sound of a ringing phone. It's a man asking you to get to a meeting kind of early. It's important. You tell him you know, and you've got time.
Lester, this is Sam Crane. Did I wake you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad I did. You promised to be at the office at 10 o'clock.
For crying out loud, Sam, it's only 9.
Lester, please, just be here for your sake as well as mine.
Sam, I'm only 15 minutes from the office. At 10 sharp, I'll walk in that door fully dressed and throw mud right in my stepfather's eye.
Well, you've obviously been out partying the night before. When you hang up the phone, you find an intruder in your house telling you to gulp. Drink? Hey!
Well, what do you like? Rye, scotch, bourbon, gin? Drink.
Well, the meeting doesn't go well without you. The guy who's your partner gets invited to kindly scram. Plus, your stepfather is making out with someone young enough to be your girlfriend. This makes it really seem like the dude who hired that intruder in your house was your stepfather.
I've been waiting a few years for that stepson of mine to decide whether he's a leech or a human being.
You seem pretty certain he's not going to show up.
Sam, your contract as president is subject to annual approval by the stockholders. That's us. I've got my wife's proxy in my pocket, and Lois is voting with me.
Meanwhile, you're in a real jam and only barely lived to tell the tale. So who do you call? Your man, who promptly calls your woman, and he's got a job for her. Get a pic of your stepdad with the hood who tried to off you.
I told Lester I overheard Bailey making a date with someone to meet him at Corelli's bar. Now, if that someone should happen to be the man who took Lester for a ride, and you can get a picture of them together, we'll nail Judson Bailey once and for all.
Your girl does her thing at Corelli's, where everybody knows your name, but the paramour of your father-in-law spots your girl and ruh-roh.
The picture's gone, Lester.
How did it happen?
Well, I was just finishing the print when I got a call from Sam Crane's secretary. She said he wanted to see me right away. But it wasn't his secretary. She hadn't even called me at all.
Did I mention your mom? She's kind of a crier and oblivious about your schnooknick of a stepdad.
Judson Bailey wants our company. He'll do anything in the world to get it.
Judson's a fine man. He loves me. I know you don't like him, but it's only natural when you loved your father so.
Well, after your girlfriend loses the incriminating pic of your stepdad, you make a wise decision and head over to Perry's. What's he gotta say?
If your suspicions are correct, Lester, your stepfather could be charged with attempted murder.
Bang! When Perry shows up, you're not there. And then Lieutenant Tragg tells us why. Big surprise, your mom's gonna cry.
Mrs. Bailey, I have been on the force for 30 years, and I've never found an easy way of saying this. Your husband has been murdered.
You've picked a slick lawyer, and while you're hiding from the cops, he pulls an old switcheroo with the missing photograph.
This was taken inside on high-speed film at a place called Corelli's Bar.
Where did you get that?
Oh, wait just a minute. It's the only print we have. You recognize it?
Well, that's Judson Bailey there, isn't it? It just surprised me seeing him, that's all.
Actually, this is the man I'm interested in. Do you know him?
Well, how could I? In this view, his face isn't even turned.
In this view.
Also, your mom's still crying.
Oh, Mr. Mason, it's been a nightmare. I'll never wake up from it.
You get picked up by the cops and reveal the situation to Perry.
He even claimed he wasn't trying to get his hands on our company.
When you argued about it, he hit you.
I tried to hit him back, but he caught me off balance. That was it.
How long were you unconscious?
I don't know. Could have been 5 minutes or half an hour. When I came to, I went looking for him.
With a metal vase in your hand.
But I never used it. That's when I saw him lying there dead in the kitchen.
In court, they've got a new deputy DA coming after you, and man, can that guy hold some witness feet to the fire.
Do you recall, for instance, having lunch with the defendant just 9 days before the murder?
I may have. I don't exactly...
Mr. Crane, we're prepared to subpoena a waiter and 2 busboys who do recall that day very well. Now.
The problem with Perry's case is that he both does and doesn't want to find the guy that tried to make you swallow all that booze. What are you supposed to do? Well, Paul brings in a ringer for the guy, and that lets Perry go to town on your deceased stepdad's mistress, which then gets the real murderer to confess.
Someone else could have hired that man, could they not? Arranged the picture taking? Arranged it all so that Judson Bailey would be blamed?
Stop it, stop it, stop it. I hired him. I did it. He'll tell you so himself.
That's right. It was Sam Crane, the guy who was looking to be your stepdad. I don't know that you can trust a dude who was willing to sign up for a life of tears, but you get to have a nice dinner at Corelli's with Perry, Della, your significant other, and a cocktail waitress who takes pictures.
Excuse me, but didn't you want your picture taken?
Yep, you can love and laugh again. Way to go, Lester. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. A Della is a deep dive on an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. And finally, a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. In an early conversation, Judson Bailey and Sam Crane are bickering over the Martin Boat Company's profits. Judson fires a shot at Sam's way of running a business. Sam has a simple retort.
Now, let's face it, Sam. Sooner or later, he's going to read one of your antiquated sales reports.
We're still making a profit, aren't we?
I'm interested in this response from JB.
Oh, I know an Indian who makes a profit building canoes out of tree trunks.
Really? Was this a thing? Is that kind of some antiquated expression of ridiculousness? Or is it an idiosyncratic statement reflecting the crass make money at all cost world of our soon-to-be decedent? Tell us what you find, Pauls. Speaking of Judson Bailey, our Della for this episode is Judson himself, actor Bruce Gordon.
That didn't hurt, did it?
Here's 10 about Bruce. Bruce Gordon was born February 1st, 1916, Massachusetts, under the name Boris Benjamin Grabowski. Number 2, first appearance on Broadway, 1937 in the musical drama The Fireman's Flame. From 1941 to 1945, he played the role of a police officer, very interesting, alongside Boris Karloff in the original cast of Arsenic and Old Lace. Number 3, made a handful of feature films. Love Happy in 1949. That happens to be the Marx Brothers' final movie. The Buccaneer in 1958 alongside Yul Brynner. And Tower of London, 1962, alongside Vincent Price. Number 4, Gordon's first regular television role was as Commander Matson, also the narrator, in the Cold War counter-espionage drama Behind Closed Doors, based on Rear Admiral Ellis Zacharias' experiences.
Objective, the secret meeting of a communist cell.
Number 5, of course, Gordon's most well-known role was that of mobster Frank Nitti in The Untouchables, which ran from 1959 to 1963.
All right. I need some time to think it over.
Sure, Mr. Miller. Shall we give him time, Frank?
Sure. Give him all the time he wants. Give him 5 minutes.
He was a recurring character and appeared in 28 episodes. He was the front man for Chicago's organized crime syndicate in the 1930s after Al Capone got jailed for tax evasion. In real life, of course, Nitti was little more than a figurehead, but as played in The Untouchables by Bruce Gordon, Nitti was memorably in control, presiding over an illicit network of Prohibition-era breweries, drug running, gambling, other vices filled with menace. Number 6, after The Untouchables ended, Gordon continued to take character parts, the Man from U.N.C.L.E., Tarzan, Ironside, but he also played Gus Chernak, a vengeful alcoholic dad of biochemist Stella Chernak.
Nurse! 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 Nurse!
What is it, Mr. Chernak?
Where you been? I could have died waiting.
Do you have any pain?
That thing. Get that out of my arm.
In 25 episodes of the soap opera Peyton Place. Number 7, later in his career, Gordon did a series of commercials for a long-distance company that made light of his gangster past. One that was famous for the Bell Telephone Company featured Gordon growling, "It's a well-known fact that very little scratch is needed to make a long-distance call all day, Saturday and Sunday. Is a buck too much for a doll like her in New York?" And then he points to the actress and says, "To pay to speak with her mother in California." At the commercial's end, the actress gets through to her mother, and Mr. Gordon dissolves in sentimental tears. The reason I bring that up, that little anecdote is included in Gordon's New York Times obituary. Number 8, Gordon was apparently married twice, once to Mary Jane Farrar Falvey. She died in 1981. He then married Marla Gordon, and he remained married to her until his death. Number 9, after his final screen appearance in 1984, Gordon retired to New Mexico, Santa Fe to be particular, with his second wife, Marla. He appeared in 2 Santa Fe College productions there, and at one time owned a dinner theater called Frank Nitti's Place in Scottsdale, Arizona. Number 10, Gordon passed away January 20th, 2011. Our Perry for this episode involves a cast, and I don't mean the episode's other guest stars. When the trial rolls around, Perry's got something on his arm, and Trag mentions it, and Perry's got an excuse.
What's the cast for, Perry?
Oh, an old service injury. Doctor feels it should be immobilized for a few weeks, that's all.
From what we can guess, there's no real reason for the cast to come up in the plot. Burr must have injured himself, had to wear the cast. Scriptwriters needed to incorporate it into the show. It's there, and then it's gone. Although, all you Perry Mason fan fiction writers out there should get cracking on the story of the original injury. For all I know, that story already exists. If you wrote it, if you know of it, send it on. Our theme for this episode is lying to yourself. Let's start with Mrs. Bailey. Man, she's pulling the wool over her own eyes, isn't she? Here's how Lois Rogers puts it.
Were you and Mr. Bailey lovers?
Yes, we were. She knew about it, too, even though she tried to pretend that it wasn't so. She thought she could get him back like that by always pretending.
And Lester, he's so wrapped up in growing up that he can't see that Sam Crane, his ticket into adulthood, is as much a problem as he is a solution. Lying to himself that he's gonna grow up on Sam Crane's coattails. Catch this admission.
Look, if you're trying to get me drunk, I already am.
And this guy's gonna show up to Sam Crane's meeting that way? Eesh. Finally, Sam Crane himself. We should be skeptical when Crane tells us that he wants and has proposed marriage to Emma Bailey.
After her first husband died, did you ask Mrs. Bailey to marry you?
Yes, many times.
And she turned you down?
Yes, she preferred to marry a conniving, thieving...
I guess in one way, he and Emma Bailey are perfect for each other. The king and queen of denial. Now, let's get to a Perry proverb. Perry's exchanges in prison with his recently charged clients are often good fodder for a proverb. In this episode's meeting, Lester has questions for Perry. He can't believe an authority figure would actually believe in him. So Perry replies with one for his forthcoming book of Proverbs.
You do believe me? You'll defend me in spite of all the dumb things
Dumb is right, Lester. But we all do dumb things. That doesn't mean we're all murderers.
Perry wouldn't defend you if he thought you were guilty, Lester. You'd ruin his streak. Now, let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
There is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each time we visit the water cooler, we give you deleted scenes, humorous outtakes that didn't make the episode's final cut. Thanks to Tom Wiltshire for the help on this week's 3 suggestions. Number 1, Lester tries to prove his worth as president of the Martin Boat Company by hacking down a fallen log into a misshapen canoe. Number 2, Mason continues to pose hypothetical bludgeons to Dr. Hoxie. Could an iron have cracked open his skull? Could a frozen margarita? Would a blow from a plaster cast splatter his brains? Hoxie has to snort.
A hammer?
A human skull can be cracked open by any heavy, blunt instrument if the man hits hard enough.
Or a woman.
Or a woman.
Yes. And then finally, as Trag goes to take Sam Crane away, Crane turns to Emma and says, "Now, Emma, will you marry me?" And she breaks down in tears, of course. Yes, oh yes. Oh, we finally get a remarriage that might stick since one of them is headed to jail. Our Paul from last episode involved the cost of Perry's trip to Switzerland. Aunt Myra, the biggest world traveler I know, did the legwork here. She factored in a flight from LA to London, then London to Geneva, Geneva back to London, then back to LA. She factored in a Swiss watch. She factored in a train ride from London to Edinburgh, then Edinburgh to Cairn, and then to a national park, lodging along with food. and then she included travel insurance, by the time it was all said and done, the trip is gonna run you around $5,000. Frankly, I'm surprised it wasn't more. Great work, Aunt Mai. Now, let's hear some listener letters. Dave Wade sent in a nice email about our last episode, The Case of the Nine Dolls. Quote, thanks for yet another exciting episode of the Perry Pod. This one had me chuckling from start to finish. Definitely one for a re-listen whenever I'm feeling a bit down. Really appreciate the effort and enthusiasm you put into each episode. End quote. Thanks so much for the note, Dave. And then our trivia maven, Nancy, wrote in with a note about The Case of the Nine Dolls. Hi. Couple of thoughts on this episode. We probably talked about this before. I just wanted to point out that Lauren Perot, who plays Peggy, was the little sister of Gigi Perot, who was in The Case of the Desperate Daughter and The Case of the Sleepy Slayer, as well as Peter Miles, who was in The Case of the Spanish Cross. Also, some viewers have wondered what happens at the end of the episode. Does Linda's hug mean she was going to stay with Peggy, or was Linda still going to avoid a relationship? Hard to tell. I'd love to know what you think. Let's get a survey going here. Is Linda staying with Peggy or not? And then Nancy also offered a possible answer to Matthew from Arkansas's question that we talked about last episode. As for the case of Paul Drake's dilemma, I've wondered if there is some music in the episode that prevents it from being played because particular companies don't want to pay the licensing rights for music. This is the situation, Nancy explains, with the Murphy Brown series. There's so much music in the series that would have to be paid for. They won't release it on DVD. That's just a thought. I love that, Nancy. Thanks for writing in. And it's worth noting that the last time we saw Bruce Gordon on Perry Mason was in the case of Paul Drake's dilemma. Thanks for taking the time to write in. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have a comment on the episode or the pod in general? Drop me a line at theperrypod@gmail.com. Next time, we see the mixed up world of remarriage and all the trouble it brings. Plus, more Deputy D.A. Sampson. You know you want it. That's in the case of the Red Riding Boots. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!